Picture this. You're at a gathering with friends. Everyone laughs at something someone just said. You laugh too, but half a second later than everyone else. Not because you didn't get the joke, but because you needed that extra half second to confirm that yes, it was a joke. And yes, you're supposed to laugh. Nobody notices. Or at least you hope they don't. But deep down, you've been doing this your entire life. Watching, calculating, imitating, as if you've been living in a foreign country whose social rules no one ever bothered to explain to you. Now imagine that one day you discover there's a name for all of that you're not weird, not antisocial, not too sensitive, that there are millions of people who experience the world exactly the way you do, and that there's a single word that explains everything. Today, we're going to talk about 15 signs that you might be on the autism spectrum, but I'm not going to hand them to you as a simple checklist. I'm going to tell you a story, the story of someone who spent 30 years trying to understand why the world never quite fit. And maybe, just maybe, at some point in this story, you'll recognize yourself. Before we begin, an important disclaimer. This video is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to diagnose any condition. If anything you hear today resonates with you, I encourage you to reach out to a qualified professional who can help you explore that possibility. With that said, let's begin, and let's start from the very beginning. Part 1. The Invisible World. When you're a child, you assume the world works the same way for everyone, that everyone sees the same things, feels the same things, understands the same things, but there's something that doesn't add up from very early on. The people around you seem to have a sixth sense that you simply don't possess. They know when someone is sad, even though that person is smiling. They know when someone is angry, even though not a single word has been said. You look at the same faces and you see faces, muscles moving. But the message behind those movements is like a language you were never taught. And the worst part is that people assume you do speak that language. So when you don't respond correctly to a facial expression, they tell you that you have no empathy, that you're cold, that you don't care about other people. When the truth is the exact opposite. You care so much that it frustrates you not to be able to decode what they're feeling. That feeling multiplies when you're in a group. Because a group isn't just one person whose emotions you need to decipher. It's 5, 10, 15 people all interacting at the same time, following rules that nobody ever wrote down in any manual. Who speaks first? How do you know when to jump in? Why does everyone seem to know what to do except you? If you've ever felt like a foreigner in a room full of people who share a secret code you were never given access to, that's one of the most common experiences on the autism spectrum. It's not that you don't want to participate. It's that the group's social operating system runs on software you don't have installed. And this is where the story starts to sting. Because when you can't read emotions and you can't function in groups, what happens over time is predictable. You end up alone. Not because you want to, but because the process of making friends seems like a mystery no one ever taught you how to solve. You watch other people form friendships with an ease that feels almost magical. You try to imitate what they do. You say the same things. You make the same gestures. But the result isn't the same. Because friendship, it turns out, isn't just a sequence of actions. It's an invisible emotional dance, and you're dancing without hearing the music. So you ask yourself, what's wrong with me? Why does everyone seem to have a manual for social life that I was never given? Part 2. Words that don't fit. There's a detail that many people on the spectrum discover years later when someone finally points it out. The way they talk is different. Not wrong. Different. Maybe you use vocabulary that's too formal for the situation. Maybe your tone sounds flat and monotonous, as if you're reading a report when you're actually sharing something that excites you. Maybe as a child, people told you that you spoke like an adult or like a professor, and you didn't understand why that was strange because that's just how you think, with precision. Some people on the spectrum even invent their own words when language doesn't give them the tools they need to express what they feel. Not out of whimsy, out of necessity, because sometimes the human language, with all its richness, falls short of describing certain experiences. Now, let's talk about something that has probably caused you more than a few awkward moments: conversations. In theory, a conversation is straightforward. One person talks, the other listens, and then they switch. But in practice, human conversations are organized chaos. People pause when they haven't finished speaking. They ask questions they don't expect you to answer. They look at you in a way that supposedly means, stop talking now, but without saying a single word. If you're on the spectrum, chances are you've interrupted someone unintentionally more times than you can count. Not out of rudeness, because conversational turns are like an invisible traffic light that everyone else can see, but you can't. And when you do manage to enter a conversation, another problem appears. What do you talk about? Casual chit-chat, small talk, that seemingly pointless exchange about the weather, the weekend, the latest trending show, is a form of torture disguised as courtesy, not because you don't care about those topics, but because the internal mechanism that selects what to say, when to say it, and how to say it seems to be broken. Maybe you end up talking about a topic that only you find fascinating without noticing that the other person lost interest 10 minutes ago. Maybe you mention people, places, or events without context, because in your head, everything is perfectly connected and you don't realize that others don't share your mental map. And the most frustrating part, when you try to copy what works for others, you discover that what was a success in one conversation is completely inappropriate in another. The rules keep changing, and nobody warns you. Part 3. The noise of the world. Let's leave words behind for a moment and talk about something more physical, more visceral: noise. If you're on the spectrum, the world probably sounds too loud. It's not just that noisy places bother you, it's that you can hear things that others apparently don't perceive. The hum of a fluorescent light, the dripping of a faucet 3 rooms away, the refrigerator motor that reverberates like an earthquake in your head while everyone else goes about their lives as if nothing is happening. Sensory overload is one of the most exhausting experiences on the autism spectrum. Imagine someone turning up the world's volume by 30%, but only for you. Shopping malls become acoustic battlefields. Concerts, which are supposed to be fun, turn into survival experiences. Even your own home can feel noisy when no one else hears what you hear. But here's where something interesting happens, something that tips the scales. Because the same brain that suffers from excessive noise also has an extraordinary ability: attention to detail. If you're on the spectrum, you probably notice things that others overlook: catalog numbers, license plates, specific dates, patterns in data that are invisible to everyone else. Your memory for details can be astonishing. The issue, if you can even call it that, is that sometimes this intense focus on details comes at the cost of the bigger picture. You see the trees with stunning clarity, but the forest escapes you. And people tell you that you miss the main idea, when in reality, you're processing information at a depth they can't even imagine. You just do it from the bottom up, piece by piece, instead of top down like most people. Part 4. Language as a labyrinth. Has anyone ever told you, "I'm dying of hunger," and your first thought was to genuinely worry about their health? Or someone said, "That meeting was a circus," and you, for a split second, pictured clowns and trapeze artists? If so, welcome to the club. Because for many people on the spectrum, figurative language is a constant minefield. Jokes, sarcasm, metaphors, idioms, rhetorical questions, hollow politeness, all of these are ways of saying something other than what the words literally mean. And for someone whose brain processes words by their exact meaning, it's like trying to read a book where half the sentences mean the opposite of what they say. How is that supposed to work? And it's not that you can't learn to detect sarcasm or understand metaphors. Over time, many people on the spectrum develop a manual system for processing figurative language. But that system burns energy. While everyone else gets a joke instantly, you need half a second to run. The words through your "is this literal or not" filter. And sometimes that half second is the difference between laughing on time and getting a room full of strange looks. Remember the opening of this video? That half second delay, that constant internal calculation. Now you're starting to understand where it comes from. Part 5. The need for order. When the outside world is unpredictable, noisy, and confusing, you need something you can control. And that's where routines come in. For many people on the spectrum, routine isn't a luxury or a preference. It's an emotional necessity. It's the structure that keeps the chaos at bay. Maybe your day is organized down to the minute. Maybe you need to know exactly what's going to happen before it happens. Maybe, as a child, your playtime was highly structured and repetitive, and the adults around you worried because you didn't play like the other kids. But the key question isn't whether you have routines. The question is, what happens when someone breaks them? If an unexpected change in your plans generates a disproportionate level of distress, if you feel like the world is collapsing when things don't go as expected, that's not being inflexible. It's a genuine response to losing the only structure that makes you feel safe in a world that wasn't designed for you. Part 6. The signs no one told you about all right. So far, we've covered 10 signs. But this video is called 15 signs, and the 5 that remain are, in many ways, the most revealing ones. They're the ones that get mentioned the least, the ones that get overlooked the most, and the ones that many people on the spectrum discover late in life when something finally clicks. There's a phenomenon called masking. It's the conscious or unconscious act of hiding your autistic traits in order to fit in. Smiling when you don't feel like smiling. Forcing eye contact because you know you're supposed to look people in the eyes. Mentally rehearsing conversations before having them. Studying other people's reactions so you know how you should react. Masking is exhausting. It's like performing in a play 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no break, no applause, and the constant pressure that if you take the mask off, people will see someone they don't like. Many people, especially women and those who were diagnosed late, have spent decades masking without even knowing they were doing it. Have you ever become obsessed with a topic to the point where it consumed all your free time? I'm not talking about a casual hobby. I'm talking about diving so deep into something, whether it's dinosaurs, astronomy, a video game, a historical era, an artist, or a train system, that you practically become an expert. And then, one day, the interest vanishes as intensely as it arrived, and another topic takes its place. These intense interests are a classic feature of the autism spectrum, and for a long time, they were seen as something negative. But the truth is that this capacity for hyperfocus, for immersing yourself completely in something, is also one of the greatest strengths of autistic people. Some of the biggest breakthroughs in science, art, and technology were made by people who had exactly this kind of mind. After a social gathering, a party, or even a long phone call, do you feel like you need hours or even days to recover? That has a name: social exhaustion. And it's not the same as being introverted. An introvert recharges with alone time by preference. A person on the spectrum becomes depleted because every social interaction demands an enormous cognitive effort. Think of it this way. If for most people socializing is like walking, for someone on the spectrum it's like climbing. You reach the same destination, but the effort is incomparable. And when you get home, you need to lie on the couch and not speak to anyone for a while. Not because you don't love people, but because your brain needs to rest from all that extra processing. Do you rock back and forth when you're sitting? Do you move your hands repetitively when you're excited or anxious? Do you play with objects, constantly touch your hair, or repeat sounds and phrases? That's called stimming, and it's a form of sensory and emotional self-regulation that is extremely common on the autism spectrum. Stimming isn't a flaw. It's the body seeking balance. It's a way of processing intense emotions, managing sensory overload, or simply expressing something that words can't. But for a long time, autistic people were told to stop doing it, to sit still, to behave. And that repression only generated more anxiety, more exhaustion, more masking. And we arrive at the final sign, the hardest one to describe, but perhaps the most powerful. It's a feeling that has been present your entire life, lurking beneath every interaction, every social failure, every moment of confusion. The persistent feeling that something doesn't fit. It's not that you're bad at one specific thing. It's not that you have a particular problem. It's something deeper. It's the feeling that you were designed for a different world than the one you were born into, that everyone received an instruction manual at birth and yours got lost in the mail, that no matter how hard you try, there's an invisible barrier between you and everyone else that you can never quite cross. And this is where the story I told you at the beginning finally makes sense, because that person who spent 30 years trying to understand why the world didn't fit didn't need to change. They needed to understand themselves. They needed to know that their brain wasn't broken, that it worked differently, yes, but not less, and that this difference had a name. Closing. The name that changes everything. Receiving an autism diagnosis, or even simply recognizing yourself in these signs, doesn't change who you are. It doesn't make you a different person from who you were yesterday, but it does change one fundamental thing: the narrative. Suddenly, an entire lifetime of experiences that never made sense start fitting together like pieces of a puzzle. The isolation, the social struggles, the sensory sensitivity, the need for routines, the exhaustion, it all has an explanation. And that explanation isn't, "I'm broken." It's, "My brain works differently." And that, believe me, changes everything. If you've recognized yourself in any of these 15 signs, I want you to know something. You are not alone. There's an entire community of people who experience the world the way you do. And seeking answers isn't weakness. It's the first step toward a life where you finally stop fighting against yourself and start understanding who you truly are. If this video helped you, share it with someone who might need it. Sometimes a single conversation, a single video, can be the turning point in someone's life. Hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more content like this. See you in the next one.